consider this a professional courtesy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. So good to be with you on this fabulous Friday, particularly for some personal reasons. I realized we missed a show on Wednesday. I apologize for that. I had a family member, my mom, in the hospital this week. Always bad news to have to go into the hospital, but always good news when you're able to walk out. So that's how it went. The surgery that she had to have couldn't have gone better, according to the doctor who did all the work. So that ended up being a great week for us, despite the fact we had to kind of go through that stress of not knowing how things would turn out. So yay. I hope the week turned out great for all of you as well. We're going to do a little review today. The Zillow numbers have kind of stuck in some people's craw a little bit. I had made some passing remarks that, anecdotally from the numbers I've been seeing, I don't run San Francisco numbers horribly frequently, but I made the statement that felt out of whack. And we're gonna do a quick review. I've literally got my MLS open right now. So this isn't even data that is yesterday's data. This is the latest. Obviously, it wouldn't change because we're just going to look at 2017, but it's the data for San Francisco. We can make arguments about sample size and whatnot, but we're going to be operating from what have been the same data that the folks at Zillow did, or at least you'd hope. And if not, it would make you wonder, where the heck is Zillow getting this data? And does the way they're doing it make their data better or worse? But what I can tell you is this is every home that was listed. Now, it wouldn't include for sale by owners, and there might be some element of that in the numbers from Zillow. But the mainstream core methods of obtaining real estate through the MLS, our data is going to cover. So this is going to be for residential properties. In all of 2017, there were only 368 homes sold, according to this. The average price in the month of December, which looks like it was the lowest for the year, was $1.112,657. So $1,112,657. That was just about the lowest. The only other month that might have been lower is March, and that is a little bit lower at $1,094,179. So there was no month that was at the average that the good folks at Zillow claimed. I think Zillow was saying 800 and something thousand, which is completely out of whack. If we group that just by the year, so in other words, we average everything out across the entire year, we don't do it month to month, what we end up with is the average price in San Francisco in 2017 was $1,250,060. So very much out of whack. Now, if we go ahead and look at these numbers again, but this time we put in San Jose, because remember that was the other area that they claimed that San Jose had a higher average price than San Francisco. And and because these markets are so close, I think it's valuable to understand the variation you get from these two communities. So if I'm not mistaken, Zillow, I think, had the average price for San Jose somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.1 million, 1.2 million, and was claiming that San Francisco was in the 800 to 900 range. Well, it's almost as if they switched their numbers over. For the average price in San Jose, and this is a number hard to argue with, right? You could argue with there only being between 300 and 400 sales in San Francisco, the city of San Francisco. But this data is calculated from 8,191 properties. So given that large number, it's going to be a lot easier to have some faith in these numbers. The average sale price, according to this, is $964,331 for the year of 2017. And if we take a look at that by month, we can see that we actually had steady increases across the entire year. So the highest month of the year was December of 2017 at $1,070,368 for prices, and that was flat in August and September. But the rest of the year, we had a slight drop between July and August, but then really just lots of steady growth, with crazy growth in October, November, December. So let's Let's talk about this for a second because I think this is also a valuable thing. The trend that you're seeing here bucks all seasonal trends. This is not what you normally see in terms of prices. You don't usually go and look back on an entire year and see just increase after increase after increase, particularly the crazy increases we've seen from September to December. Now, in September, the average price was $957,465, and in December it was that 1,070,000 number I talked about. And that's just a crazy increase in a relatively short period of time. And remember, these are big numbers. This isn't small numbers of homes being sold. It's just over 8,000 total. In terms of you wanting to understand your marketplace, being able to view these kinds of numbers is a great tool for you to have. And it's another thing to also really strengthen your knowledge of your market. So for instance, we covered the Zillow numbers. I questioned them. I thought they didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I went and I checked them. And sure enough, they didn't really ring true. Why? Because I had exposed myself enough to these numbers that it didn't feel right. From the activity I was seeing in terms of listings, and granted, I get a little bit more insight because I have more ground truth. I'm talking to people who are listing their homes. I'm talking to people who are buying homes. But by the same token, I don't just subscribe to homes via the MLS. You guys can do that too by getting into a relationship with a real estate person. But if you don't want to do that, and believe me, nobody understands not wanting to get into a relationship with a real estate person more than me. I meet tons of them. I'm not fond of very many of them, to be honest. So I get it. But I also subscribe to a ton of real estate data through Trulia and Zillow, where I get updates. I get regular updates on rental properties. When I'm looking, I have several different searches running on different kinds of rental properties because I want to know what the mainstream stuff is. I want to know what rental rates are happening with 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes. I want to know what's happening with 2-bedroom, 1.5-bath homes or 1-bath homes. In the rental market, I want to know what homes are being listed for. And it's a great way every day to sort of see these things pop up. And I particularly like Trulia because then when I go and I look at the detail page, I can check out the map and see what the crime rates are in those areas. And I also have similar searches running for multifamily units. In my particular marketplace, I notice an awful lot of multifamily units don't get on to Zillow or even into some other venues. MLS typically is the best way to go. But there is also another website called loopnet.com, and I set up on their searches for all kinds of stuff. They do searches for multifamily, industrial, all kinds of stuff, retail, shopping centers, specialties, office, healthcare, hospitality, all kinds of stuff. I'd suggest you get searches running on there as well. In my area, you'll often find tons of stuff listed on LoopNet that isn't anywhere near the MLS. It won't show up on the MLS. It doesn't show up on Zillow. It doesn't show up on Trulia. So those are some great ones to look at, particularly for investment-oriented folks. You're tending to find multifamily residential units that are larger, usually more than 4 units, but that's fine, right? And if you can make that kind of deal work, fantastic. And it's always great to have your finger at least a little bit on the pulse of those kinds of things, because what's going to happen is you're going to start in your comfort level, right? And you're building that comfort level with what we're talking about here, reviewing numbers, keeping yourself informed by subscribing to what is changing, what's coming on the market in your areas, just so that you're always sort of feeling what's going on in the markets you're interested in. And then you're going to jump in at some point. You're going to do that single family residential investment. You're going to do the math. You're going to make some positive cash flow. You're going to get some experience. And then you're going to do the math a little bit more and realize, you know what? If I had a duplex, my income per dollar spent would be much better. I'm getting more bang for my buck. You'll decide that you love the duplex thing, and then after you've done that for maybe you'll do a quad, and then it'll get bigger, and then that's when sites like this are really going to come into play. And the great news is once you've worked up to this level, you've already got this level of comfort and familiarity where you're going to be able to spot what are going to be good deals. So let me strongly suggest you check out loopnet.com. I don't hear a lot of other agents suggest LoopNet. I'm not 100% sure why. I'm sure I can come up with some horrible, nefarious reason why real estate agents wouldn't suggest checking that out. Maybe because it kind of takes it outside of the MLS, I guess. But absolutely worth your time if it's something that you are looking into. If you have interest in investing, I think this is a great resource. You'll get everything from lots and land to everything else, all the kinds of stuff you would expect on a general property search site, but with much more of a focus on the types of properties that most investors are going to be looking at. The takeaway, though, is check the numbers for yourself. Always do your due diligence. Now, are you doing your due diligence when you check Zillow? Sure you are. Zillow's doing their best to share the data that they are finding, but it's always good to use your own knowledge of the marketplace to temper that. And like we do here on this show, we don't just listen to one source. I'll be honest, Zillow is my least trusted source for this kind of data. Every once in a while, though, it'll open my eyes to an interesting market I might want to go do more research on. That happens. That happens with almost every list, no matter how poorly conceived it might be. But it's just one more tool that you can have in the toolbox. Zillow is great. We've talked about Home Union, other sources, and of course, we cover them all. And where we really find interesting information is when there's crossover on those lists. When we see communities making it onto multiple lists at the end of the year telling us where to invest, because that gives me a little bit more reinforcement to the idea that, you know what, there's more than one person out there doing research who's seeing this community as a hot spot. And that happens from time to time. I think we had 2 or 3 that were crossovers last year, and gave us, I think, some good insights into where to turn our gaze in terms of our investment interest. Now, next I want to cover some interesting news that came from U.S. News and World Reports from their real estate section. They have an article titled "Why You Should Sell Your Home in 2018." And I thought that sounded interesting. So I thought we'd go over their reasons and see what it's about. Is it something we should take seriously? If you are currently a owner of a home, does it make sense for you to continue being the owner of that home? You know, if you go and you do a search on folks who give advice on real estate, I know most people have probably come across the saying, rent where you live, own what you rent. I've heard it from a guy named Grant Cardone. I've heard it from other folks too. And it's a strategy, right? It's one of those deals where I don't think that it's a thing that does not make sense, particularly if you're at the point where you're trying to grow your real estate investments. Now, I'm in a unique situation. I am someone who, frankly, just did things the way everybody does things, right? I just kind of let things happen to me and sort of just went along instead of picking my own path on things. Now, for me, that's worked out because if I sell this home, I'm going to walk away with a good chunk of cash. And what's the super smart thing to do once I do that? Is it to jump back in, buy another property, and have a lot of that cash now wrapped up in that? Or does it make more sense for me to run out and buy investment properties and rent the home I'm going to live in? Well, it depends on what your strategies are, but I'm going to make the argument that if you're someone who's looking to quickly grow your holdings in real estate, your investments, even if you're in my position, and I'm going to be in a better position. I'm older, right? I wish I had done this when I was 20 instead of when I was 50, but I'm going to go ahead and rent because for a couple of reasons. One, I want to use that money to generate cash instead of parking it in a house that I would hope will increase in value, but may not in the near term. I may have to leave it. I have no question that the house I currently live in will be worth a whole hell of a lot more than it's worth now in 10 years and 15 years, right? Everything's cyclical. But I am also sure that between now and then, it's going to go down. And I think that is something that's likely to happen in the relatively near term. But I think that by doing it this way, it empowers you in a bunch of different ways. One, it lets you utilize whatever cash you have saved, whether you're using the cash like I am from a home that you owned previously, or whether you're someone who's been saving to buy a home and now you're deciding what to do with that cash. You're going to be able to get more out of that money by turning it into income, by turning it into something where you purchase a piece of real estate and then you have it be positive cash flow. Because, of course, the whole goal of this is to be positive cash flow. If not, let's say you are someone who really enjoys owning a home. I do. I like doing stuff. I like changing the house. I like changing the color, doing remodeling, whatever. So I will eventually buy the house I live in. But it'll be once I've reached this point where I'm generating tons of cash flow from properties I've acquired. And also, it grants you a level of freedom that most people don't even consider. There are so many things that people let define when they're going to buy a home. Oh, well, I need to buy it during these months because the kids will start school, or I need to buy it now because this is when we're moving here. In my universe, I'm taking complete control of that. I'm simply saying I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take this money and I'm going to put some aside for me to put towards the purchase of my next home. I'm going to take the rest of it and I'm going to use it for investing. And I am going to bide my time. And when the market does turn and there's a decline and the market's more of a buyer's market, because it's going to happen, right? Nothing stays one-sided forever. Eventually, we're going to see a buyer's market. Property values are going to go down and I'm going to have an opportunity to buy, and then I'm going to do it. And hopefully it won't be after things have gone so much higher that the downturn actually just takes us back to prices that are happening right now, right? That would be a worst case scenario. I don't think that's going to happen. And I'm willing to take the steps that indicate that I believe that's what's going to happen. So that's my take on that. I'd love to hear back what you guys think. And I'd love to hear back from people, because I've heard both sides. I have some people that say that's a goofy philosophy, that you shouldn't do that. If you're going to have money going towards your housing, it should be money that is building for you. Well, you know what? That sure didn't work for folks who purchased in 2004 and then found suddenly that their homes were worth, in some neighborhoods here, half of what it was when they purchased it just a few years later. And granted, that was virtually a once in a lifetime kind of crazy decline. But again, we've talked about the circumstances that brought that about. It still seems like a pretty realistic thing here. So think about it. Think about what works for you. And it also has to do with comfort level. If you're going to be stressed every single day, if your wife is going to be stressed every single day, if your husband is going to be stressed every single day because you don't own the house you're living in, and someone may say it's time for you to move out because I'm going to move in myself or do something else with the property. I get that. In my mind, I have simply put that aside by embracing the idea that, okay, in those situations, I'll move and I'll hopefully find an even better house to live in for the next chunk of time. But anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there. I think it's an interesting philosophy. I don't think it's a negative one, but I think it also needs to fit in with what's going to give you sanity in your life. I think it's a great opportunity for you to build that empire. And you need to be willing to take that kind of step, I think, for lots of folks. But if you're someone who's managed to sell that, to save up enough money for that down payment on the home you want to buy, I'm going to suggest that continuing to rent and using that on an investment property may be smarter. If you're in California, the math is almost guaranteed to work out better for you. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and cover that article from U.S. News and World Reports on why you should sell your home in 2018 in just a second. But for right now, we're going to take a quick break, so don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right. Aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We are jumping in for the second half of the show to discuss the article from U.S. News and World Reports, why you should sell your home in 2018. I've been selling you on this idea for a while. We've talked about all the things that I think are leading up to a potentially bad market in real estate. And it's all, your goal should always be to sell at a high, right? Even if you're someone who's a buy and hold person, you've usually got a strategy in the back of your head where if prices were to reach a certain point, you'd back out, right? You would put that sucker on the market and sell it as quickly as you could and pull your cash out and then hopefully invest it into a marketplace that hasn't hit that crazy peak yet, but still has upside in terms of positive cash flow. And maybe you'll ride that same wave again. You'll buy a place, you'll fix it up, you'll rent it, And then at some point, the market goes nuts there too, and you're able to sell the property at a great profit. That's a perfectly reasonable model. And if it doesn't go up, you just continue to rent, right? And so you're always kind of in the driver's seat. However, if you're someone who owns a home right now, and you're looking to execute on what we talked about in the first half of the show. Let's say you're in the same boat I am. You've decided, you know what? I'm dedicating myself to an action plan to feed my desire to start investing my money in property that will be positive cash flow. And you own a home. Well, okay, if you buy into the things we've talked about in terms of we're doing the same kind of goofy lending crap, but just with the same result, just with the slightly different set of actions on the front end that's causing all that. If you believe pensions are a huge problem, if you believe despite a lot of the talk about how much recovery there's been, we're still nowhere near where we were. We're facing all these challenges, right? We had a robust kind of booming economy when things kind of went nuts last time. This time we don't. Things are a lot weaker. There are no super strong elements. We're much stronger now than we were, say, a year ago or 2 years ago. But if you look at a chart that plots out all the various things, like what rate homes are being built and all these other kinds of things, we're not in as robust an economy as we were last time. And look how far we fell from a robust economy. Imagine the hit when we're already low. Imagine that, taking on another hit when we're already low. The potential spread of damage to a much wider set of the population, I think, is enhanced by the scenario. It's not better to be the way we are right now. It would be better if we were in a better economic position than we were in 2004 before things went nuts. All right. For those of you who haven't really thought about it, and you're just looking at some point to liquidate, even if you're not an investor, if you're someone who just kind of has a casual interest in real estate and you like listening to the show because you like hearing what's going on, hearing my thoughts about it, more power to you. Fantastic. But if you have a long-term plan and you're thinking there are things I want to do in terms of relocating, whatever else, again, this could be a strategy that works for you. If you were to liquidate your home now and actually acquire the property you ultimately want to move into in some other state or location, you could do that and rent a place locally and hold on to that other place until you're ready to actually go. So you'd actually get some positive cash flow going on your money, and you would probably be saving some money by paying rent. Now, let me explain that math for you here. When I'm doing this, the strategy I'm taking is I don't want to pay more in rent than I currently pay in everything it costs me to own my home. So that means my mortgage payment. That means my home insurance. That means property taxes and everything else. Now, my property taxes are insane. When I calculate all that out, I discover I could easily rent a home for less than what I'm currently paying to own my home. And that doesn't even include the renovations I've done. It doesn't include the paint, doesn't include the remodel of the kitchen. I'm not including any of that stuff. I should. Right? Any work I put into the house, any money I spend, I should calculate that in as an expense. In a house I rent, the worst case scenario is I may spend $50 on some paint to paint a room if I get the landlord's permission to do that. So keep that in mind as well. I'm not talking about a situation where my monthly cash flow is suddenly negatively impacted because now I'm renting. My monthly cash flow will actually improve. Not just because I'm taking the money out of my existing home and I'm going to put it into properties that will generate cash flow, but simply because even if I change nothing, if I left that cash sitting in my bank account, the amount of money I spend per month would go down by me renting, right? Hopefully you're going to do the same thing. All right. Let's see. Real estate information company Trulia commissioned a survey of more than 2,000 U.S. adults conducted by Harris Poll to get a feel for expectations and plans for housing and homeownership in 2018. The survey results show 31% of respondents expected 2018 to be a better year for selling a home than 2017, and just 14% expect it to be worse. So that's an interesting number because if you see an increase between 2017 and 2016 and 2017 about thinking about selling in 2018, and you see a dramatic increase in the number of folks who think it's going to be a good year to sell in 2018, you'll typically find an increase in the number of folks who actually do put their homes on the market in 2018. However, despite this overall idea, Only 6% of homeowners in this survey said that they plan to sell their home in 2018. Zillow echoes the sentiments in its predictions for 2018, which we already talked about. But after analyzing these two chunks of data, the folks at US News, the chunks of data from Zillow and from Trulia, after analyzing these, they came up with 4 reasons why selling in the next 12 months could be more beneficial than you think. Their first reason, buyers are chomping at the bit. They go on to say eager home buyers have been frustrated over the last few years, experiencing low inventory in most major markets, which is pushing them to start home shopping earlier in the year to try to beat out the competition and ensure they're not missing out on any available properties. Now, here's what's interesting. We've talked about what this creates. We had this chat last year. This creates an interesting sweet spot where the lag time between when buyers start actively looking aggressively and when sellers join the market aggressively is flipped, right? It used to not be quite that way. It used to be first the sellers would all come on the market and then the buyers would kind of come a month later. You'd usually see May or June, and then late June, July, you'd start to see more buyers come out. Totally not what's happening. The data I just shared with you about what happened in San Jose is showing that, where we're seeing sales and prices all continuing to ramp up all through winter. So buyers are keeping up the pressure and they're coming to the market looking for homes sooner. Now, you're also starting to see homes coming on the market a little bit earlier, but just not in the numbers to even come close to satisfying that buying desire that's going on in that first quarter of the year. Now, my goal is to take advantage of that. I'm planning on going in the market probably mid to late February, and I'm pretty confident I'm going to be able to sell my house pretty quick. I've been doing some stats. We've also talked about price banding here on the show, where you see really amazing activity at certain levels, and the way that's demonstrated is if you take homes that sell between price X and price Y, and then you compare it to the next band above that, and you discover there's a huge difference in the days on market and maybe how much it sells for compared to list price. Like maybe people at that higher price are taking a much bigger discount. Who knows? But you're seeing these things occurring, these trends occurring based on what the price is, right? And in my local marketplace, I have what I customarily call the price wall, which is the wall at which suddenly homes stop selling in 10 days and start selling in 90 days or 100 days, or maybe even have homes stay on the market for 200 days. That's a thing. That actually happens. Now, right now, that wall seems to be right at around 1.2 million bucks. It's somewhere between 115 and 12 is where that wall kind of starts. So even though I think I could potentially get past that 1.2 million, potentially, I'm going to price below that because A, I want to get it done quicker, and B, I think there's a good chance that at that price point, with more potential buyers at that price band, there's a chance it may get bid above that amount, so that I end up getting really what I wanted to get in the first place. So that's my strategy for my area. Remember, these numbers are for my area. You're going to want to check your data for your marketplace to see where this banding is occurring, and you may find it's not occurring at all. You may find that the price wall in your community is way out there. Maybe you're in a weird community where for some reason you're seeing homes selling in 10 days that are $1.8 million. There's areas where that's happening. I can point you to some neighborhoods in Palo Alto, some parts of San Jose, parts of Mountain View, where homes at those price points are still just flying off the shelves. So it's going to be a local truth for you. What's true for me may not be true for you. The overall theory may be true, but where those numbers are could shift. Does that make sense? Okay, they go on to say, relating to the buyers are chomping at the bit point, even before the clock struck midnight on New Year's, people were already getting a head start on looking at buying or selling a home in 2018. Now, some ground truth. That I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I have quite a few folks with active searches going on for homes. I probably have in the neighborhood of, right now, the number shifts, right, with each month. But I'm able to see how frequently folks visit the portal that they view properties. And right now I've probably got anywhere from 110 to 200 folks who are hardcore active, meaning they're getting a search that's delivered to them every single day, and I see they are on the site every single day looking at what has come up and leaving notes on the ones they like, saying, I hate this one. I don't want to look at the, favorites, possibilities, and trash. I mean, they're actively categorizing. And then I've got tons of other folks. I don't even know how many. I think at one point when I actually did a look on the number, I think I had something like 800 to 1,000 people running searches, but just didn't look at it as frequently. Some of them had it set up so it only came once a week in a summary format, just less serious, right? Less emphasis on the search. So there's still tons of buyers out there, but what's super interesting right now is in terms of phone calls I'm getting, in terms of people reaching out to me, more buyers than usual. So that's kind of a nice trend. I mean, it would be nice more sellers than buyers. So that's a nice switch because that's this time of year. I'm usually talking, at least for the last few years, I've been talking more to buyers at this time than sellers. So it's nice to see that switch up kind of occur. Let's see. Real estate information company HomeLight saw a 25% traffic spike on its website on December 26th, with continued high rates of traffic through the first part of the new year. So super interesting they mentioned that date because I actually ran a Facebook ad starting on December 26th, going all the way through. It's still running now, going all the way to the end of January, based on this idea that I thought as soon as we got past Christmas, folks are going to start thinking about potentially listing their home. Now, maybe that's why I'm getting more folks reaching out to me relating to listing their property. Absolutely a possibility. But I think that observation that as soon as we get out of Christmas now, folks start thinking about buying or listing. I mean, because remember, the more folks I'm getting contacting me are listers right now. The activity level is starting earlier. All right. They have a quote here from someone at HomeLight, Sumant Sridharan, Chief Operating Officer. Quote, folks have generally turned their attention away from the holiday and time with family and friends and moved on to the new year and what they want to accomplish. And I think that's absolutely a valid point. Next, interest rates are low for now. Both the buyer of your home and your own next home purchase, low interest rates can help make a transaction possible. So yes, I think this is still a thing. I think it's nice that things are where they are. But the reality is we are not at a point where people are going to balk one way or the other because of interest rates. Everyone wants to, whenever something happens in terms of an increase in sales or whatever else, it's never because of interest rates. When interest rates go down, you'll tend to see it shifting based on refis, but that's it. Buyers are not deciding to buy because of what's going on with interest rates. And we've talked about this. Where is that sweet spot? What is the interest rate that suddenly makes people go, oh crap? Because remember, when that oh crap moment hits, it isn't, I'm not going to buy. It's, I need to buy immediately before it goes any higher, right? At what point do they get that panic button pushed? We just haven't had enough volatility in interest rates for folks to really get too freaked out by interest rates. But if we started to see a little bit more volatility and started to see things hanging out much closer to 5% than 4%, as soon as we broke that 5% point, I think you might see people jumping in to get things done before a further raise in interest rates occurs, which I think a lot of folks might perceive as around the corner. But remember, rising interest rates are a sign of a good economy. They can cause potential home buyers to leave the market. According to experts, I don't think that's what happens. I think what happens is it puts a downward pressure on prices because we still have the same market of buyers. I don't think buyers go away. Buyers just suddenly say, well, you know what? At this interest rate, I need to stop searching for homes under $800,000 and I need to start searching for homes under $750,000. If that's really their max in terms of what the interest rate is defining for them, that's really what they're going to do. Okay, next on the list, you can move to find cheaper property taxes. The passing of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act at the end of 2017 means a few significant home-related tax policy changes for the 2018 calendar year. Mortgage interest rates are only deductible up to $750,000 in debt, and property taxes are only deductible up to $10,000. While these limits don't affect all homeowners, people who live in the counties and cities with high property taxes, that's me, are likely to feel the financial hit when they file taxes in 2019. If your household is going to struggle without the deductions you've had previously, it might be time to look elsewhere. I think this is a big one, and I think a lot of folks aren't really thinking about this, and some of you who have low property tax situations, maybe this isn't something to worry about. If you live in California and you can't pay the kind of property taxes we do in some of these high-value markets, absolutely worth your time to talk to your tax person if you have one, or get a tax person if you don't, and find out what this is going to do to your expenses over the coming year. Let's see. Finally, the last item on their list, renovations today won't come back in full next year. Well, this is kind of an interesting one. Zillow's 2018 predictions include the expectation that most homeowners will focus on renovations and updates this year rather than selling. I think that's an interesting point to make as well. If you've got remodeling on your schedule for the year, but be sure it's an update for you because it's unlikely that renovations will have a 100% return when it comes time to sell. Quote, you're going to get one shot at this, also from our good friend over at wherever the heck the other place, the name I don't want to say again because I can't pronounce it right. Ultimately, the additional money you're going to spend to make your home look amazing is going to be far less than the amount of money a buyer will pay. The key to taking advantage, and we've talked about this before as well, we've talked about smart things to do and the smart ways to do them so that you're not just spitting out money that you're never going to make back in terms of return on investment for a resale. The key to take advantage of the seller's market this year is not taking the tight inventory for granted. Buyers will still expect effort from sellers in preparing a property for sale. While they may be willing to overlook a dated kitchen, it's the clutter, deferred maintenance, and lack of curb appeal that can still kill a deal. If you do decide to put your house on the market, take the process seriously, and you're likely to see ample interest. So, having said that, I think that's absolutely true, and it's like anything else. The universal truths we can talk about are the hurdles, right? The hurdles that you need to encourage buyers to go over to get to that final hurdle, which is they write an offer. So work with someone, a real estate professional, if you're listing your home. Make sure your MLS entry is awesome. On day one, second one, as soon as that sucker is posted to the MLS, it should have more pictures than anyone would ever want to see of your property. If it's a relatively small home and it really only takes 15 photos of that home to really cover every room, I want to see 30 photos on there. Don't let a property come onto the MLS without an ample number of photos for folks to see different rooms from various angles and get an idea of the space. You want photos that are going to encourage people to want to see the inside. The next hurdle is your curb appeal. I still occasionally get a buyer. It happens very rarely just because there's so few homes on the market. I still occasionally get buyers when we pull up to the curb of a house. We're all scheduled to go in and see that house, and they're like, you know what? I don't even need to see the inside. Happens pretty rarely, to be honest, but it still happens. Why take that 4% chance that that's going to happen by not having good curb appeal? Go ahead and put the kids to work in the front yard, pay the local kids to come and do the yard, something, but get rid of the clutter, trim the trees, cut the grass, plant a few colorful plants here and there. Go ahead and go to Home Depot, spend $150 on some plants and put them in some pots in front of your house. Make the place look pretty and get people to cross that next hurdle, which is get out of the car and get into the house. Once they get into the house, even if you can't afford to do all the stuff, I mean, I've talked a lot about things I wanted to do in terms of molding and remodeling kitchens and bathrooms. And we've also discussed the disappointments where it didn't make sense at one point to really do anything to the master bath. The two things you should always do if they really stink are the master bath and the kitchen. Those are the things that people really are going to gravitate toward. And those are two things that are relatively dated in my house. The kitchen now isn't. We've done the remodel on the kitchen. But the bathroom in the master bedroom is still something that could use some love. But that's probably not going to happen. I'm going to do a few other things to it before we hit February. But by and large, I'm doing small painting jobs. I'm making sure everything's nice and clean. I'm making sure the woodwork is nice and the finish is looking robust and lovely. And it's costing me a grand total of whatever hours it takes to do it, but really just buying some finish rejuvenator style stuff and rubbing that into the wood. And I wish I could photographically show you the difference it made on my front door, for instance. My front door was looking a little sun bleached. It was a beautiful wooden door, but I didn't even realize how sun bleached it was until I put this stuff on it, and it just brought it to life. So it's stuff like that's easy to do, relatively inexpensive, that is going to raise the impression that folks are going to have of your property when they view it. All right. And of course, all these ideas work for even someone who's trying to do that buy and flip on kind of a budget. Now, that's usually a lot bigger of a deal. You're buying something that usually has a lot of things wrong with it. As an investment, there's a lot more time and energy and work that's going to go into that. But once you get down to that final phase, some of these small, relatively inexpensive moves are going to be just as important to make sure you're getting the maximum appeal you can out of the home. Okay. That's it, folks. I hope we have given you some good value for today's show. I'm always looking to give you good value for the time you spend. Always the goal. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I've got some interesting things on tap for this weekend. Hope you do too. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to y'all next time.